You become a senior pastor, and you suddenly lose a bunch of skills.
I think we're live. I think that was
You know
the
what I'm
first
saying?
thing that we did going live. uh, well, I'm going to share this real fast so that people actually engage. Otherwise, we'll just be talking to ourselves. Hello?
That makes me happy. We'll have a great.
It
We'll probably
is.
have a better conversation if nobody's listening.
Yeah, it probably will be. Let's see here. Hello, everybody. Nobody. Okay. People thought it was cool when I posted on Instagram. But I mean, that's how you have a good church. You just have a really good Instagram.
Yep, totally.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
listen. There's something about like Instagram Live and Facebook Live that it'll test your insecurities. Just watching people hop on and hop off, and you're like, wait, what? I'm not good enough for more than 5 seconds.
Yeah, I am better than that, and you know it, and I know it. Oh my gosh, man. Are you guys? What's up, Caitlin? Are you guys? How you guys doing in Atlanta? How's the square? You guys are like videos in your worship. Unreal, dude.
No, we have a really remarkable team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing well. I think similar. There's like it's amazing how quarantine has put people in like distinct categories. So first there are those that are like experiencing real suffering, whether that's because they're sick or because they've lost their job, and so the people that in this moment they are someone they love is experiencing real suffering, or certainly in a unique category, and then everybody else is just kind of processing or walking through this. I found that like people with little children and singles are struggling.
Really?
And then
Yeah.
there's like if you're a young married couple with no kids, you're basically on a honeymoon and having the time of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have zero sympathy for them. No, I'm joking. I do. I know it's not easy. I'm being facetious, but it is amazing as we've done our best to really like try to care about our church. Right. It's amazing how like if you have little kids at home, or if you're single, like you are feeling the weight of this in very different ways, but you're definitely feeling the weight of this moment.
Yeah.
And so we're doing well. The square's doing well. It's such a unique thing to figure out how to pastor through this. But I'm really proud of our church, and yeah, I mean honestly, like the services we've been able to put out, not only in content but in heart, I've been pretty proud of.
Dude, yeah,
So.
They're epic, man. You guys are doing a really, really good job. Dude, yeah, I was talking to Natalie Nicholson the other day. We did a live thing, and just to see how it hit Tecate, and it's like devastating for them. Like 50% of their entire city, or no, sorry, 50% of their church has been laid off. They're like suffering like from real hunger, And she's like, yeah, the Western world is struggling, but in our world, we're really suffering, And there's a difference there. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And not that people aren't suffering, not to belittle those who are wrestling through grief of loss of people and the fears and all of that. Not to belittle any of that. That's all really real for us. But different parts of the world are really getting hit in different ways, And so, yeah, I just wanted to chat with you, man. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I find that people don't know how to both honor suffering that is different and greater than theirs without minimizing or belittling the suffering they and others are experiencing. Like we just because a level of suffering isn't as great as somebody else's, doesn't mean that it's not significant. And so there's that both and. We need to grow in our ability to go, hey, listen, I recognize what that person is walking through is harder than what I'm walking through. Having a humility towards suffering, but then humility doesn't mean belittling, right? And so I find that there's this give and take that it's actually just a unique thing that most people need to learn how to grow up into, of learning how to honor greater suffering without minimizing their or other people's suffering.
Yeah, that's a really good point, man. That's a really, really good point. Well, I just wanted to chat with you. I know that you have, for the last, when you planned in 2013, right? You guys like launched, or is that 2014? 13.
2013.
You
Well,
know,
we,
and
we,
you've
we had a weird launch. We didn't do like a big launch. We just kind of did the slow roll into becoming a church. But
yeah.
it all got started in 2013. Yeah.
And you know, primarily you've been reaching a lot of single millennials, right? A lot of people who, I mean, you've married a lot of them too. I mean, you yourself didn't marry any of them, but you were officiating. You know, just want to clarify for people
That
out
little
there
bit,
who watch
that
Tiger
little bit of
King.
Tiger King just got into your thinking there, Trevor.
But you,
Yes.
but like,
I have one more. Yeah, yeah.
but just like you've walked through with a lot of people loneliness, and you yourself just being there, you've told stories of just, you know, when you moved to Atlanta, the loneliness and the isolation you felt. And so I just thought it'd be really awesome to just chat with you about Jesus and loneliness, because like right now, like here's the statistics just without a pandemic. 22% of
Right.
all adults in the US feel lonely, like often or sometimes or more than most, or more than often feel lonely. 2 in 5 in the U.S. Sometimes feel like their social relationships are not meaningful. So almost half of the people in the United States are like, I don't feel like my friends are that meaningful to me. They're shallow. Lonely people are more likely to suffer from dementia, heart disease, and depression. And half of all, who are above 75 live alone. You know, and so just loneliness is considered an epidemic in the Western world. And really, so now then we go into quarantine, we have a pandemic, and it like accentuates, it just like blows up even more, right? That we're living alone. We have some singles in our church who like, you know, are totally feeling it. And really, loneliness is hitting. I mean, some of them are even frustrated, like, God, why don't I have a wife right now, you know, or a husband? I really want a companion through this. And so, yeah, what has been the things in your life? How are you leading your people through this? How have you led people through loneliness? Um, yeah. How have you kind of walked people through that stuff?
Yeah, man, it's such a good question. And I think my first thought is just a lot of mercy for people who right now find themselves in significant loneliness, and to be reminded that that God did not make us to not be together, right? Like it actually doesn't even matter whether you hold a Christian perspective on life or an evolutionary perspective on life. You'll come to the same conclusion. Humans in their essence belong together. We
Right.
were made for each other. We were made for community. Part of what we believe as followers of Jesus, right, is that at the essence, before sin enters the world, before the fall, we are made to have create relationship with our Creator and relationship with each other. These are kind of the backbone or the essence of what we were made for. And so I think just to recognize that that it's okay that this season is hard. It's okay that this season is lonely, and to recognize that is a real suffering of this season, and in a way that part of what we have to recognize in the season is some of the best we can do is suffer well. Like we weren't made to not be in community or interactions with each other. And so I just think I just say to anyone who's just experiencing a real present loneliness through all of this, that I just have mercy. God has mercy. That this is temporary. That you just gotta hold on, and you've just gotta what we need to learn how to do as followers of Jesus is invite Jesus and people into our suffering. And so we have this. The world has a false escape plan. Pain is the enemy to the world. So the way we manage pain in the world is we just want to get out of it as quick as possible. But what we don't actually realize is that in Christ we have a level of victory over pain and suffering. But it's not by running away; it's by leaning into. And so I just think there's an invitation in the midst of suffering to experience the victory of Jesus, and the victory of what the community of Jesus can do in our lives. And honestly, I think a lot of times um, the reason, though, that people experience such profound loneliness is because we actually don't know how to do real community. We live in pretty cheap, self-centered community, and it's not satisfying in our lives. And then it takes a moment like this to actually realize that we've been living our lives with a lot of busyness of relationships, but not the depth of real friendship and community.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point because, like, church is this family, right? It's a give and take, right? Last time you were with us in December. That's what you kind of said. That some people want the benefits of a family, but they don't want to actually participate in family, and that's the hard part about living in community is that it actually requires effort from you, that you have to give and walk through with other people. You can't just receive the benefits and not reciprocate anything. So I love that. Also one of the biggest things is food, man. It isn't loneliness best medicated through food? just a sleeve of Oreos, and we're good. I mean, that's all we need, man.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
Cry in the presence of Jesus with some hot and ready Krispy Kreme. That's the plan. The cure of all ails.
The deception of that, though, is you go to the store, you're lonely, you got your hazmat suit on, and you see pizza rolls or some bagel bites, and you remember them as like these delicious treats. But the thing is, you go heat them up, and you're like, wow, I've been deceived. This is not the same, This is not the same when we're in college, and that's all we can afford,
It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
it's true. It's amazing. So as I've gone to the grocery store, my kids do love those pizza. And being honest, I'm not like hiding my own shame. My kids love those little pizza rolls. So they asked me to go pick some up, and I went to the grocery store. And I'm sure like you guys, you go to the grocery store and there's huge sections of things that are gone or things. What I noticed was every single thing that like a bachelor could just make for themselves at home was gone from the grocery stores. No pizza rolls, no pizzas, no taquitos, none of those things that you can just like throw in the microwave. And I just thought, this is a sign of what's wrong with America. That the food that's being taken is just this easy, disgusting food. That this all America's eating right now is pizza rolls.
I went hungry one time and I was like, man, I really want queso. The Tostitos queso dip, and there was one left. Yeah. There was one left. I mean, I struck gold, and still scraping the bottom of that container. Hey, so how have you guys engaged as a church, or maybe have you encouraged people just organically, like you said, like relationships, church, being in just relationships with people, part of our discipleship, with that being part of our discipleship is just huge. It's so important. How have you guys like really embraced community? How have you seen people do it? I mean, I see a lot of people from your church like just jump on TikTok. Is that your main way? No, I'm kidding. But like, how is the best way to like engage each other? And how have you guys done that? How would you encourage people to engage community in quarantine?
Yeah, well, I think the key is not the structure; it's the heart behind it. And we're doing, I think, what everybody's doing, which is just encouraging all of our missional communities and our connection groups, all of those things to go online and do Zoom and all the typical stuff that probably everybody else is doing. But I think the key is if you do it at a surface level, it's not going to work, and it's just going to be a task. Mm-hmm. And I think the key is that you've got to bring real vulnerability of your life in the middle of this. And then what you'll find is that does translate online. That kind of love does translate digitally. And while it's not the same, it'll never be the same. It's not nothing, and it is significant in our lives. And I don't know. I'm sure I don't know who said this and as a concept, but I think it's really helpful. Is right. We have this way of claiming that transparency is the same as vulnerability, and transparency is like, I'm going to be honest with you, but vulnerability is, I'm going to be honest with you and actually allow you to help me. Mm-hmm. And I find that so many people are never really vulnerable, even if they're transparent. Mm-hmm. That they have no problem saying, hey, mate, this is what I'm walking through, but they still keep everything at an arm's distance. Totally. But there's something about actually ministering to loneliness where you've got to drop your arm and you've got to invite in help from people who love you and that you love and that value you. And so I actually think the essence, right, and this is harder to do. You've got to basically discipline yourself in some ways. But in doing digital community, you have to choose to be emotionally present, and you have to choose to be vulnerable, and you have to choose to let people help you. Because if you don't, surface level community is never fun. The surface level digital community just is awful. There's no point to it, right? You're just like,
Right.
I'd rather just go binge Tiger King than this. This is what I mean. That's the truth, right? You're just like, I would rather just numb my problems,
Right.
than actually do service level digital community.
Right. Now, how do you help people? Because I mean, our perception of the Northwest is that the South is like, come on over and eat some cornbread, and some fried chicken, and like just really, there's community, there's neighborliness, right? Around here, we got the freeze. I mean, you know what Seattle's like, and
it is. No, the South is much nicer. That's just a fact.
yeah, and people are really honest. I mean, it is doubt and being honest about what they, being honest and authentic is just so celebrated. But like you're saying, like there's that pride where you don't allow people in for help, and it's seeped into the church, right? And I see it all the time. How do you help people kind of move from one to the other? Because it seems like such a large chasm for people to jump from. I can be honest, but it's really hard for me to ask for help.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it's about actually coming to a right understanding of what sincerity actually is, and I think this is part of my problem with like Northwest culture is it's actually false sincerity, right? Mm-hmm. Sincerity, we've bought into a cultural lie that sincerity is the full expression of my current emotions, and that there's nothing more important or more true than myself or my current emotions and my current thinking. But actually, sincerity is as a Christian, right? Sincerity is I'm experiencing this thing, but also Jesus, as the resurrected King of human history, has power for me and has given me other people to walk through this with me. So the only sincerity I actually have, if I actually believe that, sincerity it never means that my emotions actually get the final say. Sincerity is bringing the honest and the vulnerability of my emotions as also in witness to the fact that I believe there is something more powerful than my emotions who can actually assist me in my life through his presence and through his body called the church. So when people come and go, man, I'm just being sincere, and this is where I'm at, and I can't really do anything about it. I go, well, that's not sincerity.
Right.
That's actually just selfishness. Sincerity, because in your conviction of saying you believe that there is this loving creator who has come and met you in Jesus and has life for you. Sincerity then at all points means I'm going to learn how to be vulnerable, but I'm going to learn how to let this conviction that I carry actually inform my feelings and inform my life. And so I think for people, it's about really helping them detach from false lies. Like, this is what Jesus, Sermon on the Mount, says over and over again. You've heard it said, but I tell you, and I can't tell you how many people believe that you've heard it said, but haven't actually brought the challenge and the beauty and the gift of Jesus, where he comes and he goes, but I tell you, mm-hmm. and that there's something about what he tells us. There's something about how he informs us that actually changes our current reality. And then I think another thing I would really encourage people to do is to just always realize that your emotions are trying to tell you something. And because we treat our emotions our negative emotions as things to be gotten rid of, we don't actually let them have a voice in what God's trying to do in our lives. And part of what I actually think is the power of the season for people who accept it is that in the voice of your loneliness is actually stuff that Jesus is trying to do in your life.
That's right.
And that there's a part of us that the reason we're lonely is because we're looking for a lot of false places to tell us we're valuable. Right. And honestly, if you have any performance part of your identity, if I'm valuable because of blank, because I'm perform well enough, because people like me, because I can do AYB, all whatever it is, it's those things are getting exposed in a way in the season where it's like, oh man, part of why I'm lonely. I'm not saying all of the ways I'm lonely, but part of the reason I'm lonely is because I actually don't know how to be valuable because I'm loved by God, because I'm adopted by God through Jesus. And that is something that this is my prayer for people, is that there's a gift. Now, it's a gift that's going to go through the doorway of pain, but those are always the gifts that actually bring transformation into our lives. Rather than pushing loneliness away as something we just need to avoid, what would it actually look like to put our arms around it? Because, as I said, there's a loneliness in this that is real, that is not because you're immature.
Right.
It's just real, and there's a level of suffering and embracing your arms around that. But I also think that as a post Christian secular society, as a technologically suffocated society, we have actually lost our ability to know how to be okay being alone.
Right.
And there's something in that where we've got to reclaim, I can be alone and not having anyone tell me they're great because of what I'm performing or what I'm doing. And I can actually be okay because I'm convinced that my identity in Christ is real. Yeah. And it's gone from head knowledge to heart knowledge, and it's transformed my life. I'm loved by God. Yeah. So I can be alone and still like myself. I can be alone and still feel valuable because my value isn't coming from other people. My value is coming from Jesus.
Right. No, I love that. And even like that loneliness piece, that when you feel lonely, it's actually saying something. It's actually telling you something. And I think one of the biggest things, apart from this season, because ultimately, like you said, it's not a maturity issue necessarily. We're made for relationships. So it's like, obviously we're going to feel some sense of loneliness and disruption in our life. But on a regular basis, if we're somebody who's just dealt with loneliness and you're following Jesus, one of the biggest things is loneliness is actually beckoning you to come close to Jesus. It's Jesus going, come near me. I can take care of that. John 15, it's all abide. He abides in you. He lives inside of us. And so therefore, we're never alone. So loneliness to some degree is telling us something about the condition of our life, but ultimately we're not alone. There's a whole world of intimacy with Jesus that we've yet to explore, and loneliness is just the door to it. And that's what we got to just kind of jump in. And it is hard. It is a road. It's not just because sometimes we view Jesus as this, as just getting the benefits of Jesus. He's the vending machine with the, you want to get the Twinkie, right? And God, just make me feel better, instead of, no, how do I cultivate a real, loving, intimate relationship with Jesus? And when we do that, loneliness will creep its head up just like any other feeling, but we ultimately know how to deal with it because we have relationship with Jesus. We know that he's with us, and you said, you can be fully alone and go, I'm still valued. I'm still loved. Jesus is still with me. Just because I'm alone doesn't mean I've been abandoned. That's two different concepts. Yet loneliness often says, no, you've been abandoned. People don't care about you. You're not worth anything. And really it's no, Jesus is still with us, and there's just more to have with him. And then, give yourself grace in the season. And and so, with that, because I know you sit down with a lot of people and you just give little you just give advice. What are some practical things? How could somebody just start something today in their quarantine? What would you say? Like you say, think about how you're feeling and see what Jesus is saying through it. How would you say, open up your journal? What would you say to them? How would you help them make a practical step to really start fighting with loneliness a little bit?
Well, I would say, so a couple of things. I think the first thing, I believe this in connection to loneliness. I believe this in connection to a lot of things. I think there's just something for us to learn how to suffer in the presence of Jesus. And it's a skill that nobody naturally has. You just have to learn how to develop it. And so one of the things that I would encourage people to do is when you feel, because loneliness is pain in essence, right? It's just it's a form of pain. So when you feel that pain, what would it look like to go, my first move is going to be to take this into a place of connection with God. And that's different for a lot of us, whether maybe that's throwing your headphones on and listening to worship, whether that's going on a walk, whether that's silence, whether that's talking out loud. I mean, there's a lot, but what for you, what if you could name what are ways where I feel connected in life and intimacy with Jesus? What would it look like to take that pain and go be there with it? And one of the things I've encouraged people to do a lot is because anxiety is the internal infrastructure of almost everything we're experiencing, right? Is one of the most powerful things we can do is go learn how to name your anxiety. That would be, so here, my first recommendation would be go, okay, I'm in pain. So instead of the initial reaction all of us want to do, which is numb, I'm going to numb this pain. Go, okay, I am going to go be with Jesus in this pain, and I'm going to start to write down, I'm going to name it. I'm going to name my anxieties. And I feel lonely because I feel like people I thought cared about me haven't checked in with me as much as I thought they would. I feel lonely because I deeply want to be married, and I'm sad I'm not married. I deeply want to be married, and I'm afraid I'm never going to get married. I want to be married, and I feel like I'm unlovable and unattractive, and that's why I'm not married. And like when we get honest, right? I'm just when we actually name our pain. Yeah. That what we're going to do is we've got to, we're going to sit there, and then this is the key. You got to lean into it with Jesus and with people you trust. So it's like, okay, I feel lonely because of this. Jesus, I got to let you got to talk to me about this. Yeah. And that's where we believe we got to let the power of Scripture speak back to our emotions. We got to let the power of the presence and the voice of God that we believe He speaks, He loves to speak back to us. But this is where we also go to trusted community, and it's embarrassing. Let's just be honest. All of us want to be strong. All of us want to be the hero in the room. There's that thing in all of us. Now, we don't want to feel weak. And so it's hard to call someone on the phone and go, hey, I just need to tell you that quarantine has brought out a lot of pain of loneliness because I actually believe I'm not attractive enough to get married. Yeah. And I just need to tell you that. I need to tell somebody that. Yeah. Yeah. And the power of actually, and then if they're good friends, right, they're going to speak the truth to you, which is actually, that's not true. That's not true. That's that is not a reality of who you are. That's not a reality that's going to prevent you from getting married. That's a guarantee. That's a false lie of self-perspective. The beauty of who people are on the inside and on the outside. I mean, there's ways. I'm just giving that as an example, but I would really encourage people to practically go be present in pain with other people. And I've often find that people who are lonely, and I don't want to put the blame necessarily back on them because every story is a little bit different. Oftentimes have a hard time being honest and have a perspective of too many times that they expect people to come to them. Mm-hmm. And what that'll do is just become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And believe me, I know the pain, as you do. Everybody does know the pain of I keep coming to this relationship and I feel like I'm the only one investing in it and they're not investing back. Every human has experienced that from peers, from mentors, from family members, from everyone. Sometimes there's real hurt. Sometimes people just don't care about us. Sometimes busyness takes over our lives. Everybody has experienced that. But what that does for somebody who has kind of cyclical loneliness is they've let a couple of negative experiences inform them on how they operate. Yeah. And oftentimes we just have to realize, if Jesus really is our mold and our model, the one we're following, Jesus is an initiator. Jesus is a pursuer, and not only for the sake of others, but even we can inform that for our own needs. What it looks like to be people who just who create real pathways for people to come back to us. And so I would encourage somebody who's lonely and would say, "Well, I've reached out and I didn't hear back, or I didn't do this." I would encourage you to reach out again and reach out better and reach out clearer. And a lot of times, sometimes we're hurting and we send somebody a text that says, "Hey, you want to talk soon?" And they missed our text, and then we get hurt by that. Right. That's actually, I would tell people, it's not a good enough attempt. That's not on the other person. Sometimes what we need to do is we need to call and we need to leave a voicemail and we need to say, "Hey, I'm really hurting and I would love to talk with you on the phone." And then text them and say, "Hey, I left you a voicemail that I'm really hurting and I'd love to talk to you on the phone." Yeah. And then send them an email and go, "Hey, I don't know if you saw," like we put out, because we're insecure, we put out these little lines to people that, because this is what we're actually doing. If I'm really valuable, this little bit of a line should be enough for them. And what we're actually doing is we're testing the waters of our own value, which is just actually, it's giving into the pain and the insecurity that's already there. Exactly. Sometimes, and so we're just playing games that are reinforcing our own fears, rather than going, "Man, I just need to tell somebody who I know cares about me that I'm hurting, and I need to make sure that they hear me." And so I'm going to say it in a way that I'm heard, and anyone who actually hears you, who cares about you, is going to respond. Yeah. And we've got to do that. I just think we've got to do a better job at communicating well.
Yeah, I think really, we have to take responsibility, even when things aren't our fault. Loneliness isn't always just our fault. I get we can be victims of our circumstances. That is so true. But oftentimes we don't take responsibility of of what we're feeling or what we're dealing with. And that's what you're kind of saying is, if you're not reaching out, making it clear, it's almost like you're becoming a victim. Going, "Oh man, I guess, yeah, like you're feeding in that lie. I guess I am not valuable. I'm not loved." When really, you're trying to eradicate something that is lying to you, that you are not significant. And if the enemy is in anything, he is in that. He is in isolating and deception and trying to make you think that God cares very little about your life. And so if you are at war with the enemy, if you looked at it rather than you're a victim of your circumstances, and more of, hey, we're at war here for truth and for freedom, for what Jesus gave his life for, then you would attack it in a different way. It's not a matter of trying to get all your friends to prove themselves to you. It's a matter of you living free through the blood of Jesus. And so you fight. You're like, man, what is it, Second Corinthians 11? It says we pull down every disobedient thought. Any thought against the nature of Jesus needs to be pulled down and destroyed. And we have that power. But we just got to get a little bit of confidence in us to be like, no, let's kill this thing. Let's kill this. Let's feel it. Let's walk through it. Let's process it. But let's not use this as a time to test everybody around us. Let's use it as a way to try to get free and confident, because every day we live in a lie is every day we're missing something that Jesus wants to give us. And if we live with that kind of under us, I think there's, oh man, tremendous freedom, way faster and quicker than we actually think sometimes.
I agree. And I think in the middle of that, we just got to be reminded that Jesus sees us and understands. Yeah. Like Jesus, I'm convinced, experienced loneliness. Jesus knows what it's like to have people reject him. People know what it's like to be misunderstood. Jesus knows what it's like to be rejected. Those are all things that Jesus not only experienced, but he has mercy for us. Right. And so I think part of it is reminding ourselves that Jesus not only sees us, he loves us. He not only loves us, he has victory for us. Yeah. And so I can take my pain, I can trust him with it.
Yeah, dude, totally. I love that. Phil, thank you, man. I really appreciate.
Oh, bro, that's so great. I miss you, dude.
I miss you, man. I hope we can get down to Atlanta real soon.
George, listen, Georgia's probably going to be open for months before Washington is, so you can just come and hang out here for a while.
I should. because I'm still like it's cloudy right now. We've had a decent April, but I need like some 90-degree. I need my skin to be melted off a little bit.
Here. It's high 70s and beautiful.
Ooh.
I apologize.
Atlanta's so awesome. But dude, really love you. Thank you for doing this, and I think it's really an encouragement. If you like this and you like were encouraged through this, share the video. Get it to people who you know are lonely without really exposing all their loneliness. That'd be bad. Like, hey, I know you're really lonely, and you post the video. Just maybe direct message it to them. Encourage them because we just want to be an encouragement to people because there is hope in the midst of this. Jesus is in the midst of this, and he wants to give so much mercy. So, love you all. Phil, love you, man. And yeah, we'll see you guys all soon. I'm just ending the broadcast. Oh, it's no.